Hey guys, welcome to Y4 Consulting. I'm talking with Sarah Vedas today. She is a marketer, a content strategist with over 13 years experience. I'm so excited to be sitting down with Sarah because she has just recently joined Y4 Consulting as well. So welcome, Sarah. It's great to see you. Let's jump right in and talk about content strategy and why it's important.
Awesome. Thanks, Sandra. So, for content strategy, at this point, a lot of people are really familiar with content, what it is. We watch TikTok, we've seen Reels, Instagram. We know what content is. But what a lot of people fail to think about when they think about content strategy is that content makes up a cohesive story or narrative. You can kind of think about content like a house where you could throw in a bunch of stuff haphazardly into it, but it would be really weird to have a bed next to a toilet or a fridge in your office. So content strategy is taking that house analogy and really defining what the purpose of it is and then filling each room according to that strategy. So for example, you might have insights into who you have as an existing audience for things like blogs or web content. You know who you may want to engage with that content. And you want to make sure that the content you're developing and that strategy reaches and engages the audience that you have, as well as the audience that you're going after, because they might not be the same thing. So if we go back to that house analogy, you want to make sure that you're filling each room according to the needs of the audience. Or to put it more simply, define your audience, design your content for that audience, and then reach that audience where they are. So don't put a nursery in a bachelor pad, for example. And then the importance really of content strategy is that it allows you to build awareness of your brand and establish you or your brand as a thought leader in your industry and really drive traffic to your website, to your blogs, to your social content. It gives you a chance to nurture prospective customers and ultimately, hopefully, convert leads into customers.
I love that. And I love that analogy because it's very visual and it's something we can all relate to. So now I can't stop seeing the bathroom that you describe. I love that. What you're describing also is a segmentation strategy, right? When companies are
Mhm.
thinking about it, they're really understanding their customer base, what their customers may respond to, and then being relevant at those moments of truth, which
Exactly.
is super important. So you touched on a lot of those strategies that companies and people should consider. What is a critical consideration that people do miss?
Yeah. So something that I think is often missed is that we fail to recognize how irrational humans are. And I say this as a very irrational human. This is sort of like the foundation of economics, but we're trying to make predictions about how people will act rationally, but we're not rational creatures. So just because you browse the web a certain way or you look at a certain type of content, maybe on a certain channel, that doesn't mean that everyone else does. And you really have to remember that you are not the audience. Even if you are that target demographic, you're still not the audience. And the minute that you think you are, you're going to start to make assumptions and act really irrationally. And it's going to cause you to make decisions that are not in the best interest for your brand or your strategy. So if you're the graphic artist or the marketer or the strategist, you have to take that hat off. You have to be independent because you are not who you're marketing to. I think one of the other things that brands and companies miss a lot is content optimization and improvement. A lot of companies will invest upfront in that marketing strategy, which is great, and they'll build some really beautiful collateral, but they don't have a solid methodology for analyzing and performing the performance of the data or surveying their audience for that qualitative feedback. They're not refining messages or updating the mix of content that they're putting out there, so things will get stale, or they're not using the most optimized keywords based on industry trends. So you need to regularly check those metrics like engagement and conversions and lead quality to see what's resonating, and then solicit input directly from your audience on what content they find most helpful. Again, I, Sarah, might really enjoy learning about art history on TikTok, but that doesn't mean that that's what my audience wants to see from me. So being willing to test new formats and topics and channels for your content, that content strategy is not just the building of the things, but it also requires a really iterative, data-driven approach to get results. This is not the wrong coast, set it and forget it. You really have to keep coming back to it and test, learn, and optimize based on what you're seeing.
Yeah, I love that, and I love that reminder of take yourself out of it in that objectivity of it, and oftentimes it's just such an emotional thing, especially if you're owning a project and working on it, because you start to relate to it and you're thinking, "Well, this is how I would want to be talked to." The other thing, you just reminded me, the whole optimization piece of it. I remember having to implement a chat sales platform and ongoing, I mean, it was all about the metrics. Like, what are your success measures? What do you define as success? And continuously look at that. And then it was even figuring out like schedules of when should it pop? How long should it stay? When do we need to remove it? Is it active? Is it not? There were just so many things that we had to do in order to determine what those optimal points were. And then it's also control, right? Like you don't want to change
Yeah.
too many things all at once because then now you don't know which one is actually creating
Right.
the
Right.
impact. So
Yeah.
really, really good. This leads me to some of the challenges that could be avoided. What are some of the bigger challenges that you've run into?
Yeah. So it's a good question. And I loved when you talked about that constant optimization, but maybe controlling it one variable at a time so you can really hone in on what was the issue and what to fix. Because to your point, if you change too many things all at once, you don't know which was the thing. So some ways to avoid the challenges first with thinking that you are the audience is conducting really solid user testing. You have to be okay saying that you had a brilliant idea, but there wasn't a market for it. You have to be okay with understanding that. Or maybe you have a solution to a problem, but the amount of people that that problem would helps alleviate is so small that it doesn't make sense to create a marketing strategy to solve it. A great product and marketing strategy, it has to support the market. And if there's no market for it, it doesn't matter how beautiful or elegant the strategy or content is, you're not going to have those customers because they just did not have a business need for it. And if you don't do that needs analysis to truly understand who's going to benefit from the solution, then you don't know who you're marketing the product or strategy for, and you don't know if you're going to be successful. So there's a really good example. I don't know if you've stumbled across it of Bic, who makes pens and
Mhm.
razors and all kinds of products. I'm sure you have Bic pens laying around your office. But there was a time when they tried a marketing strategy, product strategy of targeting women with a product called Lady Bic. And they were pens designed specifically for women. Um, I don't know if they thought we had more dainty hands or we didn't want blue or black colored pens. It was an epic fail. They didn't know their target audience, and there was no need. I had no need for a specific lady pen. And as a result, they got absolutely railed on Amazon. The reviews were funny, but also quite mocking of what did you think was going to happen with this? So it was an example of a really profitable company that knows its audience, but in this case, just didn't do that needs analysis, didn't take into consideration what they were trying to do. And they were trying to develop a product for a non existent problem. And it really backfired on them.
Yeah, it sounds like someone was making some decisions just to get maybe some customer counts or something.
Yep, exactly.
Those are great examples. We touched upon success measures a little bit ago, but what are maybe some of the metrics that people should be measuring? Some of the key ones that we should be looking at.
Yeah, yeah. So it's always a good idea to set your success metrics at the onset when you're developing your strategy so that you know you achieved what you set out to achieve. Um, Success metrics can mean a lot of different things to different people, but broadly speaking, it's making the marketing goals you've established and breaking them down into parts. So, for example, if I wanted to achieve X, I know I have to do ABC. If I've done A right, then I have this percentage that I wanted to see for conversions or for engagement. And you keep going down the line for each part, breaking it down smaller and smaller, really taking an engineering approach of taking the bigger problem and breaking it into smaller pieces, and then setting a metric that you want to take for each one. I know a lot of companies have moved to OKRs instead of or along with KPIs. So those are objectives and key results. A lot of companies are using them for performance management. But I found that they do work really well on the marketing strategy side for campaigns because they force you to define what your objectives are and then the results that you intend to see based on how you plan to execute those objectives. So the KPIs or performance indicators are also useful for benchmarking and seeing how something is performing over time, but they're usually a fixed measurement, whereas the OKRs are really adaptive. So you can set a success metric for content. I would use, like I said, that mix of OKRs and KPIs. So in this example, I could set a KPI of increase website traffic by 20% over the next 6 months. Whereas the OKR would look more like launch a new content marketing strategy, and the key result might then include publish 50 new high quality blog posts by the end of Q2 and achieve an average time on page of 3 minutes by the end of Q2. So both are necessary and add value, but the KPI doesn't help me define how I'm going to increase that web traffic, whereas the OKR really helps me define what I'm trying to do and then articulate how I'm going to do that thing and by how much and when. So it really adds that extra level of specificity and clarity when you're goal setting and then how you're going to achieve those goals and measure them to make sure that you are successful.
I love that. And this is something that, I certainly run into, which is that different departments may have different metrics that they're driving. Hopefully that all aligns to a singular sort of overarching umbrella and success metric, which could be a KPI. So that's a really good distinction. Thank you for doing that. What are
Yeah.
some of the trends and changes that we're seeing today that the business should be prepared for?
Yeah, it's such a good question. Um, I would be remiss if I didn't bring up, I think what we're all kind of seeing and is on in everyone's periphery, but I think AI really is the next iteration of this digital revolution that we're living through. And I know there are quite a few businesses that are shying away from it or steering their employees away from it, but it is here, and it's not the bad guy. I think it's actually a really helpful and powerful tool. We shouldn't be restricting our employees from using tools like this. We don't stop employees from using calculators. Can you show your work? Yes. Same thing with using AI models and agents. So I like to use AI as my digital consultant, but like an agency or consultant, it's only as good as the information that you give it. So if your employees aren't trained on how to best use AI, they're not going to know how to train various models then to meet their needs, and the outcomes are going to be just really awful. And I think we've all seen some of that, marketing automation emails where they've been completely written by AI. This doesn't make any sense. You can use that old adage of garbage in, garbage out, right? It can only give you as good as the information that you're feeding it. So if you give your employees or your company a chance to really dig in and understand how to prompt those AI agents to meet your needs, just as you do when writing a really good brief, right? You have to put in very clear information when you're writing a brief to get a clear strategy back out. Once you do that, you'll get some really powerful and useful data and insights and content back. Again, it's not the end all. I wouldn't say what you get back is what you should consider final. But as a first step and testing things out, I think it's a really helpful tool that anyone can leverage at this point.
Yeah. And I want to add to that because one of the things that I've been always passionate about and have spent so much time in is the customer loyalty programs and loyalty space. And I think we'd be remiss to say there's so much like data out there of your customers that we're collecting, first party data,
Hmm.
etc. And you can have AI just adds another dimension of possibilities,
Yeah,
but it's really quite surprising that we companies aren't doing a better job of being relevant in terms of their messaging and being able to capture those moments of truths as they are engaging with customers or missing those opportunities
yeah,
altogether. It's quite shocking for the amount of data that's out there. So that's one thing that I know you've seen and I've seen, which is this collection of data, but then how to make sense of it, how to aggregate information to where it is useful and actionable. That is so
yeah,
extremely important as well for
yeah.
companies to really.
Interpret those data points into actionable insights, right?
Yeah.
That's what we're always after.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I think that's a lot of times very difficult. Like, I think you talked about the strategy side of it, kind of having the vision for how what's the foundation? How do you want to build it? How do you want to assemble? Because oftentimes clients have an end goal in mind, whatever that OKR or KPI might be, but the getting there is where we come in and we're able to help. But then it's the implementation and it's the ongoing maintenance, if you will, of does
yeah,
it still make sense? Because the landscape is changing, to your point, right? And
right.
AI is speeding that so much. So what
Yeah,
worked maybe 6 months ago, a year ago, it's constantly moving around us and reshaping. So staying on top of not only the strategy you implemented, but the ongoing results and how you need to pivot and adjust is so incredibly, incredibly important. And that is going to be a continuous trend that I think we're anticipating as well. Um, so I think maybe we close with last thoughts. I mean, this is such a great conversation. I know
yeah.
you and I want to continue having these as well, share information. We're here obviously for those who are listening. If you want to work with Sarah and I, reach out, info@Y4 Consulting. Um, Maybe Sarah, you and I should do another segment around customer loyalty and kind of
Oh,
the
yeah.
acquisition retention strategy, because that's what gets me super excited. We know that loyal customers spend more. The more
Hmm.
loyal they are, the larger their lifetime value is. So, and acquisition costs continues to go up and up, and
Hmm.
it's been on that trend for a really long time. So it is something that I know we both are super passionate about. So I love to just
Yeah,
continue to record these sessions. Sarah,
let's
any
do
last
it.
word from you?
I would, if anyone is considering working with us or the value that Y4 Consulting adds, I would say the value of working with consultants is that it's getting that second opinion. And it's if we think about, we're all taught that 16 ounces are in a pound, but it's such a random form of measurement, right? I don't always just have that at the top of mind. So it's okay to Google it. So you can think of Y4 Consulting here as Google. We're here so that you don't have to rack your brain constantly to solve all of these problems. You could have a first go at it and then bring in a consultant to come in and bounce ideas off of, or to check your framework, maybe add in any supplemental information or opportunities that you might not have thought of. I know a lot of times companies will struggle with, well, can I afford this? Is it really, do I have the time? Do I have the budget? But you can also think then about the inverse of that problem, right? Can I afford to spend all of my time trying to identify and then solve every problem that I have in order to be successful? You probably don't. So bringing in some of that outside help and perspective is really going to help you be much more efficient and effective in meeting your marketing strategy and goals.
Yeah. Well said. Very well said. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. I will chat with you soon, and I appreciate the segment with you. Thank you.
Awesome, Sandra. Thanks. It was a pleasure speaking with you today.
Okay.